Welcome in Friday edition of lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we are with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday. We look to stay connected with student athletes, coaches, different members from our alumni base, and different members from the Lewis and Clark College community on Facebook Live. You can find us easily by going to facebook.com/lcpioneers and click on the live tab, or type in more easily lcpioneers.com/live. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark College. We are the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and a member of NCAA Division III, competing with over 430 institutions nationwide as a member of that level of the NCAA, and as a member of the Northwest Conference, 9 teams in Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington, a chance for our student athletes to compete throughout the Pacific Northwest in 19 intercollegiate athletics programs. We'll talk to Immanuel Harice in just a few moments. This is a follow-up to an earlier episode that we did when we discussed the 17th Annual Ray Warren Symposium, which was held in mid-November. We had a chance to talk to 2 of the 5 co-chairs. Immanuel is another one of the co-chairs. We'll have a chance to see how the symposium went. And as we learned from Shalini and Samantha, the first 2 guests on the topic, this symposium, unlike any others because of the pandemic, but because of that, we'll find out what information, what parts of the symposium can you still access because it is available online, a lot more virtual content because of the pandemic than in years past. We do invite you to get in touch with the show. You can do so by using our Facebook Live comments, or you can always email us to sports@lclark.edu. A chance to suggest any future guests, or of course with Facebook Live comments, we would love you to share any questions that you have for our guest as well. You can also connect with us on Twitter and Instagram, our handle on both LC Pioneers as well. So look forward to having you join us for the social media follows that entail those 2 websites. You can also find us as a virtual visit by going to lcpioneers.com, our admissions group continuing to offer virtual visits and virtual interviews, plus a nice tour video. You can be shown around the Lewis and Clark College campus. We've been showing highlights of that since the pandemic started in the middle part of March, but that's a good way to keep a chance open at being able to see campus, as there's limited on-campus visitors during the opportunities to hold in-person visits, which right now in the state of Oregon is more difficult, but we certainly encourage you to get involved by finding us on lcpioneers.com and clicking on the Schedule a Virtual Visit link. Also, our playlist continues to be updated on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/lcpios. All of our past episodes dating back to the middle of March, it was actually the last day of March, we have those updated in a YouTube playlist. You can also find those on our website by going to lcpioneers.com, clicking the fan zone, and choosing lcpioneers.com live. All right, let's bring in our guest for today, a chance to catch up and see how things went with the 17th Annual Ray Warren Symposium that was held earlier in mid-November. We bring in Immanuel Harice to lcpioneers.com live. Immanuel, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on this Friday and close out our week. And this one has been one of my favorite parts of hosting the show on a daily basis, Tuesday through Friday, since the later part of March, is the chance to catch up with people who we normally don't slow down long enough to talk to. And that includes students who are putting on great work like symposia on campus. Let's recap the symposium. Kind of give us your take on how everything went back in mid-November.
Thank you, Ryan, for the invite. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. Yeah, I think it went well. It was definitely an adjustment. We kind of realized as coaches that we were never actually in the same room through this entire process. We were always on Zoom, or someone was abroad, or someone had to go home. So it was kind of an interesting process in that sense. It kept the same structure. Kickoff Wednesday, except of the kickoff dinner, but we had our keynote and went all the way to Friday. We had race monologues being available by link. Same structure as that. We kind of did the same thing. We came up with our own theme over digitally, so it was kind of weird. It wasn't like a in between conversations and like, what do you think about this? It was just like, this is my paper and this is what, and then we have conversations over Zoom. So I mean, it was interesting in that sense, but I don't think it was, it's any different in preparation, maybe in execution, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, there's the online component of this, and I'll ask you in a few moments what kind of information or aspects from the symposium that people can still access on the website. But the focus was around movement, and we asked again our prior two guests, Samantha and Shonali, about movement and why that was chosen as the theme. But give us your take on that as well. What was it about that theme that really excited you?
You know, I what really excited me is that everyone had their own different definition of it. I think on very easy, it was we came up with it during the summer when there was a lot of um, protests for the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think it was kind of right there on the easiest level. And I think for me, I was thinking about movement in other forms. I think like movement from one structure and one system to a different system was the movement I was thinking, and the ways to live and ways to operate. A lot of people were thinking about movement in forms of dance and just other forms. And I think that's why it was kind of uh, broad enough, but not too broad, where it's like we'll just throw anything and make it a panel. So like we still didn't have structure with it, but I like the way that movement came to be. And yeah, I think also another thing was it was interesting because we had just well, we weren't just out of a pandemic, but I mean, just out of quarantine or like a lot of quarantine, where a lot of people had to stay home. So imagine having a pandemic about movement, where a lot of our movement was being restricted, or yeah, things of that nature.
Immanuel Harice, our guest on lcpioneers.com Live, one of the 5 student co chairs for the 17th Annual Ray Warren Symposium that was held in mid November. And because of the change to having everything be virtual because of the pandemic, that means some of this content still exists on the website. We're sharing that link right now on Facebook Live, and you can search Ray Warren Symposium on lclark.edu to find it easily. What are some of the things that people can access because it was virtual that still exists after the fact?
I think our biggest question that we got asked if we had is, oh, sorry. I guess the most requested thing was the keynotes that our keynotes gave Jerome Ellis and Jason De Leon. Those are available on the website. If you look those up, the excuse me, the we had a virtual exhibit, Movement and Resistance in Albania, by Aiden Bennett and Ben Warner, which is like a collaboration with the Watson Library that we had. So that's online, and the art gallery. I think it's under the art show link rather than the schedule link. Everything else is on the schedule link. So all that's kind of still available and able to be seen. So yeah, and other events like the roundtable, the flows between education and incarceration is also available. So I would just suggest that everyone go and take a look at it, just to see what's available to kind of rewatch our highlights.
And I liked both keynote speakers. I had a chance to watch both of those sessions myself, and two of the co-chairs were there also welcoming people in. And what I liked about that was hearing how you, as a co-chair, had access to these speakers in a pre-planning session, kind of more of a one-on-one, except co-chairs to speaker session. What did you get out of that as having an opportunity to talk beforehand with the keynote speakers?
Yes. So I don't think we had a pre-planned meeting with Jason De Leon, but we had one with Jerome Ellis, and it was kind of just to figure out what he wanted to know, what he should talk about or what they should talk about. And they were like, well, I have this idea. And I mean, they talked for like 20 minutes straight about this idea that was like vague. And I was like, I remember hearing it and I was like, are we worthy? Are we worthy of like them to discuss this? And it was so interesting because they were talking on and they were kind of just blowing our minds away. And we were like, oh, we got lucky. Like we got the right keynote this year. Certainly it was kind of the feeling. So I was very excited to have Jerome come and speak just based off of that meeting. And we kind of knew Jason more. I wasn't able to read his book, but other students were, and they were certainly excited about what he was coming to talk about. Kasha, as she stated in her introduction, was able to meet him, so we were all excited for both of them.
What was it about the opportunity to serve as a co-chair that really excited you? Why did you pursue this opportunity?
For me, I think it was at my first event. I mean, my first keynote. That was like, oh, this is great. Like people get together and fulfill this. I'm like, this got to be hard. This has to be hard as a student to kind of do this stuff. But I'm up for the challenge. For me, I think another thing was on just like our campus and just college campuses around the nation, I think the presence of men of color are kind of highlighted in spaces that aren't the most academic or just aren't dealing with like academic papers and being speakers and things of that nature. And I often, I'm not saying what I don't want anyone to confuse is saying that like masculine people or males need to be in spaces more than they already are. But I think that in this space, it felt like it was a lot um, more women and uh, fem, feminine center people who are more on who are working the so I'm getting time, working the symposium, and I just felt that I didn't want to feel like it was just kind of like their thing to work. I think that men that I think men like myself care about these issues, and I don't want it to seem like only they care about it, because I think it is important to bring it to bring the symposium every year with different perspectives. But yeah, I'm not trying to say that we need to be in these spaces more, but I just felt like, hey, I like that too. So yeah, that's why I decided to join.
Well, and I'm certainly thankful for all of the co-chairs. I mean, y'all were excited to come on the show and share 15 minutes with us, and I know you were super excited because described to me as a podcast enthusiast and really like consuming content. So I'm excited that you're here with us. What is it about the podcast medium that really intrigues you?
I think for me, I don't get enough reading, and I feel like I listen to a lot of music, and I'm just like, I could be doing a lot more with like instead of listening to like the same three songs. So I started to listen to podcasts as a way to kind of get educated. I was just like, just walk into class or at dinner, you could just get enough information that's about a chapter in the book in like 30 minutes. So I'm like, why not do that? And then I think that's when I started to get more into podcasts. I know the real reason why I got into podcasts because I thought everyone smart and intriguing had listened to podcasts. So I was like, oh, well, let me see what this podcast thing is about. So I started listening to podcasts and I got into it. And then all the people who I thought were smart and intriguing, I was like, are you listening to any podcasts? And none of them were listening to podcasts. I was like, oh, okay, well, now and then I just got a repertoire of like listening to podcasts and a catalog of podcasts. So I think that's how I really got into it. But how I got interested in it was the ways that I could learn more.
So if I ask you what your favorite podcasts are, do you have any that come to mind?
Off the head, probably Dissect. Dissect is like a music podcast where Colt Kushner, he breaks down songs by lyrics and the tone and the importance. I think he's like a music major, so he's really into it. Another one I've been listening to is Making, about making of kind of famous people. It's been 3 seasons, so there's been Beyonce, Obama, and Oprah, and just like the making of how they became famous and how they got to where they were. And what's another one? No, NATO. NATO is a podcast just about Black birth givers and kind of like their process of giving birth, and like I guess it kind of ties into movement because it's talking about like the movement from like more Western traditions of like birth giving and the resources and the specialty to kind of like more non-Western forms of birth giving that has been kind of interesting, and it tells stories. So that kind of movement. They're the final plug of the year for this museum that I've been kind of really interested in.
You're watching lcpioneers.com live, presented by Pios Room. We're on Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. You can find us at lcpioneers.com/live, or find all of our past shows on our website in the fan zone under lcpioneers.com live. Immanuel Harice is our guest, a junior from Los Angeles and a co-chair for the 17th Annual Ray Warren Symposium. And because you're a student at Lewis and Clark, it ties in perfectly to this question I ask nearly every student athlete guest that I have: why you as a student chose to attend Lewis and Clark. What was that reason for you?
Well, for me, I think I didn't go when it was raining, so I kind of that was part of it. I think another reason was the ability to kind of pick different majors and kind of I I got into psychology at the beginning, but I quickly got out of it. So I mean, of course, I didn't know when I applied, but I kind of had to leave it. But the ability to go to a different major was very easy, and to kind of just explore different things. I'm kind of in my junior year and I'm still exploring different majors. I was just talking to my advisor, and the major I'm going to explore, I'm still able to do that, even though I'm kind of well into my major, or other majors. So yeah.
Had you ever been to the Portland area prior to uh, coming up for school? Is there anything about the Pacific Northwest that you found especially fun?
Um, It was. I remember the first time I came, it was a bunch of trees, and that just that idea, like just flying over, into PDX, was noticing that. But I think the Portland aesthetic. I was just telling people like there's a Portland, like you can see a street in Portland and know it's Portland. Um, I'm from LA, and it's not always like that, but certainly with Portland, the moss on the ground is certainly like a staple, and I think that that part of Portland and the nature, and you can feel like you're in the middle of a forest in like 5 minutes at any point in Portland. It was kind of what drew me there.
I find it interesting because I'm originally from Montana. Anytime my mom comes out here, she points out the moss too. So it's interesting to hear that from another source from another place too, that that's the
Yeah.
case. Well, let's close with this. You talked about sociology and anthropology as a major. Up to this point, or maybe even ahead of you as you move into the second half of your junior year, has there been a class or is there a professor that you've had that you've really enjoyed, or is there something you're looking forward to? What's a story kind of around that?
Um, for me, I've had good classes. I think, oh, back when I was a psychology major, I took a course with Kabir Hinesmith. Hopefully, I didn't get that wrong, but I took a class with him, and that was kind of, it wasn't like a SOAN class, but I mean, being that he is a SOAN professor, I kind of got that perspective in like writing and reading and the readings that we had. And I think that was probably what drew me there. It was Introduction to Asian Studies, I believe was the course. And I think that was kind of what solidified my understanding of the SOAN department and my kind of introduction and my move to movement to the SOAN department.
Well, Emmanuel Harice, thank you so much for taking the time and spread that back to everyone who was involved in the planning of the Ray Warren Symposium. As you mentioned, those materials, keynote speakers, the art exhibit, all still available, and we'll post that link one more time in our Facebook Live chat. But Emmanuel, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and discuss everything that you're up to on lcpioneers.com live.
Yes, thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. No, that was great. Thank you so much. And fun to talk to Emmanuel about all of the things that are going on with the Ray Warren Symposium. And I've mentioned this when we had the first two co-chairs on the show, how the symposia, whether it's the Ray Warren Symposium or the Environmental Studies Symposium and some of the others that will feature too during the spring 2021 semester, because that's been what's fun about this show is to highlight some of those things. It's been neat to see these milestone, these key events that happen at Lewis and Clark year in and year out. 17th annual Ray Warren Symposium, 23rd annual Environmental Studies Symposium, and slow down long enough to share those with you because there's a lot of our student athletes who have been involved with these. And sometimes I think that maybe they don't know when you're looking at what school to go to, opportunities to get involved as a student. And so Emmanuel did a great job giving perspective on the process of becoming a co-chair and reasons for doing so, and then some of the special things that come out of that, like interaction with the keynote speakers and getting to plan and kind of set the theme for things. That's a big deal in my opinion, and so it's really great to hear that firsthand, and that's something we get to do on the show that typically year in and year out isn't always the case. So I'm very thankful that Shawnee and Samantha joined us prior to the event and Emmanuel was able to join us today. on lcpioneers.com live. We were behind a little bit this week. I was off all last week, and still trying to get everything set up for the show is a challenge. And we're kind of in that same boat heading into this weekend, but go to lcpioneers.com/live and see all of our future guests. We usually have those posted by Saturday or Sunday, and that's where I'm referencing even this week, getting our shows programmed on our Facebook Live page well ahead of time didn't happen, including today's. So I'm certainly thankful for everyone who did stop by to watch. You can see our complete schedule at lcpioneers.com/live, usually posted no later than Sunday. Sometimes it can be as late as Monday, but we have the shows Tuesday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Of course, if you miss it live or you're only able to tune in for a little bit, you can see all of our past shows at youtube.com/lcpios. So until we see you again on Tuesday for our next episode, I'm Ryan Goff. We appreciate you joining us since the last day of March, 35 plus weeks up until this point of the fall 2020 semester. And of course, as we have any updates pertinent to COVID-19 and Lewis and Clark athletics, we will post those on our landing page, lcpioneers.com/COVID. There are links to information from the NCAA, the Northwest Conference, and of course links to the Lewis and Clark College COVID page as well, as we're still trying to get things prepared for the upcoming year. Right now, Northwest Conference competition for fall and early winter sports suspended through at least January 1st, 2021. I'm Ryan Goff. Thanks so much for having fun with us. Immanuel Harice, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again soon for more lcpioneers.com live presented by PioStream. Goodbye, everybody.
I think everyone should take intro to chemistry because the chemistry department here is phenomenal. Everyone I've known has had a good experience with everyone in that department, so I think it's a worthwhile course to take.
What is one class that everyone should take at Lewis and Clark? I really enjoyed Education in a Complex World. You kind of get to discuss all the issues that exist within education today, and you get to kind of explore that by going to classrooms firsthand and volunteering with children, which I thought was a really wonderful experience.
One class that everybody should take at Lewis and Clark is anything with Kundai though. I think he definitely changed how I thought about rhetoric and media studies and just education in general.
For me, it was International Affairs, just Intro to International Affairs, because I think it really gives a good perspective on important issues around the world.
Hi, I'm Nick Lombardi. Something I've learned at Winterim this year is how to communicate a vision.
My biggest takeaway from Winterim is probably the networking. Getting to talk to everybody, connect with people for the future is one of the most valuable things, and I did Winterim last year, came back for more this year.
I think a way in which my liberal arts education has really helped me and my group formulate our ideas is that concept of critical thinking and having many different backgrounds. Me being an econ major and my two group mates being chemistry majors, we really get that well-rounded background, well-rounded ideas.
I think overall it's absolutely worth doing. You find yourself not only being more prepared for, say, well, this next semester, on top of being more prepared for life in general.